The only thing that's guaranteed in this life is that it will always change. It will always be different. You can choose to leave your situation with all the what ifs and not knowns and potential instability that comes with it, or someone else can choose it for you.
Tanya MFK teaches how to unbusy your life, untangle your business, and unleash your vision by building a strategy around your uniqueness. As a break all the rules business coach, Tanya helps overworking and underwhelmed solopreneurs of all levels to let go of the hacks and create sustainable wealth through self-tailored strategies and support. Together, all her tools, workshops, programs, and speaking is around one core idea. The idea that there is no someday. Your best life is now. And I know that you'll find through our conversation that this is very true in the life that Tanya lives, and we'll talk about why that is. But I was actually introduced to Tanya by another guest on the broadcast, Robert Party. And Tanya, you actually wrote the foreword to his book, Possibility in Action. So that was the first taste I had of your philosophy and your mindset. And I'm just so grateful to have you here on the show. It's awesome to have you here.
Absolutely. Feeling is mutual. Absolutely. It's happy to be here.
So tell me, where did that motto of life come from? There is no someday, the time is now. Like when did that become important for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, the fastest version of that is on my birthday, March 19th, 2005, I sat in a doctor's office and was told that my husband had 4 to 6 months to live. And that changes your perspective. That changes the way you see things. Prior to that moment, I had lived my entire life for a someday in the future. I grew up extremely poor. We lived in homeless shelters as a child. And so my idea was that I got to build a safe life. I have to create some stability. I have to make a better life that I can live and enjoy so I don't repeat my childhood. And so I worked really, really hard as right out of high school. I went right into healthcare. I had a career while most of my friends were in college and having fun and all this stuff. I was building and I loved it. You know, I was like, this is, you know, I'm going to get this thing. We got to get the house. We're going to get the car. We're going to do things. I'm just going to work. And there is some great principles in there. However, I was doing it to the exception of enjoying anything in my life at that time. My 18, 19, 20, 21, any of those years, I mean, it was 19-hour days. As soon as I got home from work, I was following a minute by minute schedule. And when I say minute by minute, people, I don't mean like, oh, we got to do this. I mean, I literally had the minutes written down, which did include bathroom breaks. So my poor husband, he was only given a 3-minute bathroom break in between the activities that we had to do. It was insane, right? Because in my head, if I could get it all done, whatever all meant, right? All of it done, then one day I would just wake up and have this day where I could just do whatever I wanted, right? Someday I would enjoy it. And so that day, March 19th, 2005, my someday shattered. That someday changed. It no longer existed. And all of a sudden, everything became the present. It became a now. It became what happens now. What do we do now? How do I enjoy or take into this moment with the precious time that I have? And after he passed away, I had to sit with the regret of looking back of all those years of time that we could have just gone for the walk. We could have just walked to the museum. We could have just sat down and maybe watched TV together because I thought there was going to be some someday in the future. And so it really became apparent that from that moment on, I would no longer look to the someday. I would no longer try to find this day in the future because right now is the only thing we're promised. And what I say all the time is we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There is no someday on the calendar. So if you want to do something, you want to create something, you have to make it real by putting it on a real date because someday doesn't exist. It's not going to happen. So that was the impetus for that. I know we jumped out of the gate really heavy there, everyone, but that's really where it came from.
It gives us an idea of what your life looked like before the way it is now. And people still don't have a glimpse of what it is now. So I definitely want to get to that. But I'm curious, when you were in those chapters of go, go, go with you and your husband, what was your mindset? Was your mindset, we need to build this so that someday we can enjoy the fruits of what we built? Like, what was the mindset during that time of hustle? And it's abnormal to have that mindset in the sense that even I'm very structured, I'm very organized, but I've never gone minute by minute. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, where did the minute by minute come from? Is that something that you learned from your parents, family? Like, how did that come about?
If only. I'll be honest. Looking back on it now and all the work that I've done, it was fueled by fear. Quite honestly, it was really fueled by fear, and with a little bit of competitive edge as well. Right? I played sports as a child. In high school, I did those things. So there was a little bit of a competition. Like, I'm going to get it done better, faster, quicker than anyone else. Even as a child, I remember looking at my kind of family situation and not understanding, how does my mom go to work and then not have money, right? Like, how is that possible? I'm going to save. I'm going to do it better. So there was a bit of a competitive edge in there that I think fueled it. But the majority of it, I think that was maybe like 10% of it. 90% of it was fear. It was this scarcity mindset that if I don't figure it out, if I don't do it, it's not going to be there. I have to make sure that I'm safe. And so that hustle didn't come from an excitement of achievement. It came from the fear that if I don't, then I'm just one step away from being homeless. And it
Mhm.
wasn't the reality at all. My life had already changed. I had made so many different choices in my life to be in a better place. But that scarcity mindset stayed with me for, unfortunately, quite some time. Even through all the changes, it took a long time to recognize. Even when I started stepping into success and things going quite well, I still would freak out at the idea of spending $3 that weren't allotted in the budget, regardless of whether I had it or not. So that was a huge part of that hustle and that drive was this idea of safety. And I see it a lot. I see it a lot now with people as well. As, oh, I want to do that, I want to, but I don't know, I got the job and it's safe there. And yet I think a lot of us saw through the pandemic and through different things that doesn't really mean anything. You can choose to leave your situation with all the what ifs and not knowns and potential instability that comes with it, or someone else can choose it for you, like the world's circumstances or an employer that made some poor decisions. Either way, you can find yourself in the same position. It's just a matter of deciding whether or not you want to choose it or let somebody else choose it for you.
Yeah, well said. What happened to that fear once you're now confronted with what you mentioned earlier? You were told that your husband's got 4 to 6 months to live. Like,
Yeah.
did that fear immediately it was transition to something else? I know you said it took some time to even get to the
Yeah.
new mindset that we're going to talk about. Like, what did that part of the journey look like for you?
Yeah, well, those 4 to 6 months obviously was quite a whirlwind. Being young, we both worked in healthcare, and in the state of healthcare in the US, we also didn't actually have a lot of health coverage. So there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of bills, there were a lot of red tape and things that we had to jump through, hospital visits, all of those things that just it became the now, the idea of being in the present. And
Mm.
when I look back and think back of how much time we were actually able to spend together, it was incredible. All of a sudden, there was time to be there with him. There was time to sit and read that book. There was time at the times when he was out of the hospital and still able to walk, that we went to a museum. Even in his shape, even with the portacath and different things going on with him, we made space to go, we gotta enjoy right now, because at the time we didn't know if the diagnosis would come to fruition, and indeed it did. And so it was just really shifting from scarcity was no longer there. I was faced with the exact thing that I feared, which was the instability, the not knowing what's going to happen. It was right there. And yet all of a sudden I was extremely capable of going right through it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we go, oh, I don't know what I would do. Well, you don't, because you're not there yet.
Mm.
But if you can look back, and I think we've seen the kind of the inspirational quote a lot that says, if you look back on your life, you've gotten through 100% of all of the hard things that have come your way, right?
It's
And,
true.
and it's true. When you look back, you go, of course, I can't imagine going through, because you haven't been it. But when you're faced with it, all you do is take that first step, and then the next one, and the next one, and then you can look back and go, oh, look at that insurmountable thing I actually completely got through.
Yeah.
And it built me and it grew me and it all those things. And I even had this thought the other day of, what if it breaks me, right? We get that a lot. Like, well, that might be the thing that breaks me.
Mm-hmm.
Being broken is not actually the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
Because when we're broke, that's when we can see what we need to fix. Something being broken doesn't mean the end. Something being broken means the opportunity to actually take time to fix it, take time to change it. I always forget the name of it. There's that beautiful comparison to some sort of like Japanese art where the broken vases and things they take and they fill the cracks with gold.
Yeah.
And it really is such a powerful image and understanding to look and go, would I recommend somebody say, oh, you want to do what I did? You want to have the level of success that I do? Well, make sure you grow up homeless. Make sure you go to 13 different elementary schools. Make sure that you go through some big trauma at 25 and you'll be right there. Like, no, that's not the recipe. But if I look back at all those cracks, I can see where they were filled with gold. And so I think that's the mind shift that you take when you start to go through those places and start to go, I won't know until I'm there. I won't know until I go through it. And then once you do, it's really not a why, but a now what. Like a lot of people go, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And the truth be told, you could give me the best reason in the world. You could say, well, Tanya, it's humanity was saved and 10,000 babies got to live because he died. And I want to say I'm a kind person, but really I wouldn't care at that point.
Yeah.
It's not going to be enough. That doesn't matter. So the why, no matter what the answer is, doesn't matter. The thing is now what? And when you can face the now what and step into that next step, I think that's where your power comes in.
That's a powerful question to ask. Now what? Not why did this happen? Why is this happening? But what am I going to do moving forward? And like you said several times there, you don't know how you'll react until you're in some specific situation. And I'm curious, if you went to the Tanya where you're with your husband, you're go, before the diagnosis, is there anything you could have said to her to help her be in the present moment now, rather than be thrust into that new reality of you have a limited amount of time together? Like, what can we do in order to be there now without that?
That's an incredible question. One of the things that really stuck with me through this process, kind of my inner mantra, was that I recognized at that time what I was trying to do was control. I was doing all the right things in order to control the future, to safeguard nothing happening, to make sure that I was going to have the money in the bank, that I had the job, that we had the savings, that I was going to buy the house, I was going to get the car, and all, whatever those things are that mean that you're safe, quote unquote, that you're safe and that you arrived. And it wasn't until everything happened where I recognized you clearly don't have control. Life will happen. A comet can come and hit you. You do not have control, but you have power. You have power in every one of those moments to choose how you will feel. You have power to choose how you will react. You have power every single hour to choose how you will exist, how you'll feel, whether you'll choose joy and bliss or you'll choose stress and chaos. We don't think it's a choice. Oh, we don't think it's a choice. But it absolutely is a choice. And it's the power. We do not have control. And that need to try to control and safeguard, to recognize that the only thing that's guaranteed in this life is that it will always change. It will always be different. And there's a tattoo on my arm, actually, that is Anika, which is the Pali word for impermanence. And I do get the the irony of having a permanent tattoo that says impermanent, but it's that reminder that anytime that we demand for something to stay the same, that we go, it has to look this way. This is how it has to look like, and I need to have this. This happens in time management a lot, right? My schedule has to look just like this, and as long as nothing knocks it off, then everything will go according to plan. It is not how life works.
Yeah.
It is not. And if we don't explore the power we have when the changes do inevitably come, then we will definitely fall apart, Because
Yes.
what's falling apart isn't us. It's this idea that we had control has to be dismantled. But the power that we have when the things change, that is where it comes from. And I think if somebody had talked to me then and explained the difference, like Tanya, you're trying to control and make it safe. And I'm going to tell you, honey, stuff's going to happen. It's going to, your
Mhm.
perfect plan here, some of it might work, but not all of it's going to.
Yeah.
So where can you exercise power? Where can you exercise the power in today? Because the other idea was, I will suffer now because I'm going to control the future if I do. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But once I recognized that I had power in my reaction, I had power to choose how to see it. And I'll be honest, my husband really set the tone for when that diagnosis came. And he really just took such a beautiful, as most of us wanted to just, the movie gasp and, all those kind of things. He was like, okay, if this is what it is, and it was very saying, what can we do now?
Hmm.
What do we, I think even asked, like, what do we want to eat right now?
Yeah.
And it just was that power that he had. He couldn't control it, but the power he had to say, I'm going to think about what we're eating today because I can still eat and I can still do those things. And it really just, I think all of us in that room, we just kind of went, yeah, okay, all right. And maybe even instilled a little bit of that power of us to see what we could do as well and our reaction. So that's what I would say. I know it was long-winded, but
Yeah. Thanks for that. No, he sounds like an extraordinary man, especially with
absolutely
that
was. Yeah.
reaction and the way he set the tone in that way. And
Yeah.
there was a point where you then said, I can do whatever I want. I can travel wherever I want. I can build the kind of business that I want. I can create the lifestyle that I want. And it's this
Yeah.
concept of success by design, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when was that moment? Because there's even now, I look at my life. Like I work inside of an organization. I've got my family and I've got my future son and I've got all these different things. And do I believe that I could, drop the organization, travel the world, do whatever I want? Yes, I believe I could. However, there's a big fear of, well, what
Mm.
if this happens? How would I transfer everything to virtual? How could I make it so I can work anywhere? Like all this fear and all these questions come up and all these reasons why it wouldn't be possible. But here you are on a podcast today. You just got back from a month-long trip in Thailand, right? And
Yeah.
you're going to be going on a ski expedition here, like, and then Spain and like all these other places. Like, what was the moment that you realized I can create the life and live the life that I want?
Yeah. Well, shortly after, very shortly after, actually, my husband passed away. I'm American, and as a young, teenager, and I was in my 20s at the time. So those teenage 20 years, one of the things that we saw a lot in movies was the dream of the European trip, right? The Euro trip. Right? And so at that time, about a year before my husband's diagnosis, about a few friends of mine said, hey, we think we're going to do a big Euro trip. Let's do the Euro trip. And I had a job at that time and I was going, well, yeah, I think I'm a grown up enough to do that. So we had planned on taking this trip and nothing had actually been kind of sorted out yet, but it was like, yes, we're going to do it. Well, when it gets closer, we'll figure it out. And then my husband got sick and passed away. And so about a month, maybe if that, we're talking 4 weeks after my husband passed away, my friend called and she said, I know this is probably a crazy time to have this discussion, but that trip we talked about, we're still going. And is that something that you want to do? And I was like, yeah, this is a crazy time to be asking that. And I don't know. And I'm going to give a shout out. I don't know, Michelle. I told her, I said, I don't know. I have no job. I had quit my job or taken a long sabbatical, technically. I spent months in hospitals. I had moved back into my parents' home as we set up his kind of hospice care there. I had no home. I had no job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I hadn't even gotten there yet. It had only been 4 weeks. So the idea of rebuilding was so foreign to me. And then she flipped it on me and she said, you're right. Maybe it's the perfect time because you have no rent. You have no job to report to.
Yeah.
You have nothing else. Where else will this moment happen? Because you're going to rebuild. You're going to do these things. And I'm a planner. I was a worried person. I was the one who spent my whole time making sure that I'd be stable.
Yeah.
And I sat with that and really looked at that as the opportunity. And instead of taking the little small amount of money that I had left after all the bills and all the things to rebuild, I took it to go on a trip to Europe.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have to say that took a lot of encouragement from other people. It took a lot of stuff to really convince me, because the practical, responsible girl who wanted that stable future, just like you said, what if? I just lived a bunch of what ifs. So at that point, what ifs didn't scare me anymore. What if? Yeah, bring them on. Okay. At this point, what the heck else is going to happen? And I'm going to get through it, or I won't. I mean, I think almost even a callousness kind of was like, why not then? Okay, let's do it. And I did. And it was hugely mind opening for me. This, again, idea coming from a very poor place in life, the idea of traveling to Europe was something that was always explained to be extremely out of reach, extremely expensive, unattainable in so many ways. And I ended up going there for close to 2 months. I wasn't there for a 7-day trip, with booking all stuff. I did the hostel thing. I hopped trains. I did all that. And I was like, this can be done. Granted, maybe not everyone wants to backpack, but I just said, if you really want it, don't tell me it has to look a certain way. You want to go to Greece, there's a way to go to Greece. Now, if you say, if I have to go to Greece and it has to only look like the Ritz-Carlton, then you're right. You need to get a plan together. If you say I got to go to Greece, there's lots of different ways to do it. And it really made that tangible for me to go, there's a lot of ways to do this. And I've been working so hard to have this house and this, car and these things. I just went to Greece and London and Rome and all of these places. And so that just really opened it up. And I came back with a whole different view and like fervor for life. And I stopped looking at the job as security. And I started looking at, what life do I want? And what job will, at this time I was, so hadn't started a business yet. So what job is going to allow it? And I tell people this a lot. I said, a job, I love it. There's this whole battle entrepreneurship. They all have their places and they can be amazing for everyone, but neither one offers more security than the other. Mm-hmm. They all can be stripped away at the moment. They all can be extremely rewarding. In the end, what you have to go is, the job does one or two things. It either allows you to do the things you want to do. It is the thing you like to do. You're like, I love this. This is exactly what I'm about. I want to go and coach soccer, or I want to be a teacher. Like, this is what I want to do. It fills my cup. Or it gives you the time to do the other things that you want to do. And if it doesn't do one of those two things, it is the wrong job. Yeah. Period. No paycheck is going to replace your daily joy, your daily life. This idea that someday you're going to do it now because someday you'll feel better. It's not going to happen. So it's either the thing you love, or it allows you the time and space to do the thing you love. So maybe you're like, I don't mind showing up and doing whatever your job is that you do, because when I go home, I have enough time to play guitar or play with my band or build my thing or paint my paintings. Awesome. Then it's the perfect job. But if it's not doing one of those things, it's the wrong space.
Yes, absolutely. I was talking to someone recently about them getting, applying for a new job recently, because what they're doing, the factory they work in is closing, and the factory has been there literally 100 and something years, and now it's closing. And he's got a great job. He enjoys what he does. He's making more money than he's ever made. And I said, well, what do you think about this new position you're applying for? And he's like, yeah, I think it'd be good. He's like, it seems easy enough. And I said, the one thing that I've never factored in when I was applying for a new job or doing anything is how easy it would be. Like, I'm not looking to see how easy it's going to be. I'm looking to see, is this something that's going to challenge me on a daily basis? Is this something that's going to help me grow? Is this something that's going to contribute to a greater good of some sort, whether it's people or a mission or whatever it may be? And it sounds like to me, when you made that decision, and yeah, shout out Michelle for bringing that about, because look at the chain of events that's happened since. Yeah. When you said, yes, I'll go on that European trip. Yeah. It's almost like you were completely stepping outside of your comfort zone and taking actions that didn't align with the identity that you were living at that time. And by doing it and hopping the trains and staying in the hostels, and it sounds like you broke a lot of the beliefs that the past version of Tanya held. And at the same time, it sounds like in that trip, you were really able to craft and form a new identity for yourself completely.
Well, and the thing is the identity was shattered outside of my own situation as well. I was I was Tanya Figueres. I was, which you'll see is not my full name now, that I was a wife to this person. We were a pair. And then all of a sudden I was showing up to places as this single person. And I used to feel like I had like this scarlet letter on my forehead because I'd walk into a place and everyone knew what had happened. And it was almost like you go in a movie and the record skips, it's like the music's playing and it goes, right? It's like, oh gosh, she's here. What do we say? What do we do? And it was like, yeah, it's only her now. It's not her and her husband walking in. It's not her and John walking in. And so that really was like, well, then who the heck am I?
Oh.
And here's the thing is that more times than not, when you talk to someone who's gone through some experience like this, whether it be loss, whether it be any version of a huge change in their life, they come to this. Because unfortunately, there's nothing else in our life that has gathered us up or primed us to look at this. And that's part of of my mission now is going, how is it that we're primed so much of how to make money? We're primed so much on going the education, the job, which I'm all for, but not anywhere are we primed to look at who we want to be, how we want to show up in the world, what we want our lives to look like, what we want our mornings to look like, what kind of joy we like. No. We ask kids from the moment that they can speak, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when we say that, we mean, what job do you want in order to make money? That's it. That's the only thing. And so most of us haven't been given a space, pace, or reason to actually look at that. And it is unfortunate that it's typically in these situations of places of tragedy and loss that we're faced with that. And I tell people so often, if people can make these kind of changes and choices in the midst of tragedy, imagine the ways that you can do it in the midst of joy and calmness when your life isn't at that point. Do not wait for life to force you to look at it and make a decision and start to appreciate it. It works, but man, it's not a game plan. Like we actually have the opportunity to look at this now. And so I was forced to look at that now because I worked in the medical field. So I had doctors, friends, and colleagues going, so you coming back to the office? What are you going to do? And I just spent, months in the hospital. Love you doctors, any of you guys, but after months of sitting with you, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. It's the last thing and last place I want to be. And so I started to explore. I started to take chances. Like, I started making bags and selling them at festivals. That was like, I was in my 20s still. So I started that. I did accounting for an airplane fire extinguisher company, right? And not because I had any passion about it, but that particular job and the hours allowed me space for the other things I was interested in testing out at the time, right? So I started just picking these weird things. And I worked in a pretty prominent field in medicine. I worked in clinical immunology. I could be a very lucrative position. I'm sure if I stayed with it, I'd be in I was already quite ahead in my field for my age. And so I met with one of my doctor friends and he's like, so of course, when he coming back, but another one was like, you've had your fun. When are you going to come back and kind of get to a real job? Like, you make money here, you do this, like, yeah, come on. Like you've explored, you've had your moment, like, come on, be a grown up and come do it. And I'm so thankful for that conversation because it again was another place in my life that forced me to look at it and go, you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm actually really not. Because I in my head thought, yeah, I mean, I could do that. I was like, yeah, I'm not. I have no idea what the heck I'm gonna do, but I'm not gonna do that. And so that really, again, as you asked, like, what was it? It was continually being forced with who do I want to become, and having to look at that and ask that and think about that and put it at the forefront. I told people that at that time in my life, I felt like I was in an accelerated life class. Like if there was a class called, this is how to do life. It was like this real like advanced version that, the courses were really fast. The teacher was like sending me a test all the time. That's how it felt. And I almost felt like I was walking around kind of like this Zen monk. Like everything was in a different light. Like, what does that mean? And what does this mean? And it was incredible, even on the heels and on the tails of the situation that had happened. There was, and there were so many times in my life forward from that where I actually I yearned to come back to that level of presence and awareness. Hopefully not with having to have another traumatic situation happen,
Yeah.
but it's so powerful to create those spaces. So yeah, that's
You took off the old pair of glasses and you put on this new pair of glasses, and
yeah,
you might be seeing the same physical places, the same physical people, but you see them differently because now you're looking at them through a different lens. And
absolutely.
this question that I'm about to ask you, I ask from both the perspective of everyone listening who wants to know, but also myself, because you posed a couple really powerful questions there. And you mentioned, and then I tried this job and I tried this job, and not because of passion, but because of what it allowed me to do. It allowed me to live that lifestyle. And that is so admirable. And at that point, you had an idea of what that lifestyle looked like. So when you posed these big questions, and maybe that's a belief that they're big questions, maybe the answer is right there, but because we see them as big questions, we don't see the answer that's right in front of us. So my question to you is, when you ask big questions such as, what life do I want? And also the question you said of, who do I want to become? Like, I ask myself that question even now and recently, and I love my life. I truly do. And still, when I ask that question, I don't really know, because I'm confronted with so many different options. Well, I could do this and I could do that. And I know I could be best in the world at each of these different things, but it's difficult for me to say, okay, well, this is it, and go all in, right? So for those listening who say, sure, it's easy to say, what life do I want to live? Like, when you first asked yourself that question during this chapter of your life, what did the process of finding the answer look like? What was the answer to that question?
Well, the first thing that I knew for sure, and again, I was in my 20s, and so I knew my big mantra at the time was, I will no longer trade my time for money. That was it. I will no longer, because I was so pushed face to face with how little of it you potentially have. So I'm not going to do that. And when I say that is, of course, we work and we do those things, but that wasn't going to be the factor to give you all my time in exchange for money. Time became extremely precious and important to me. No, so that was a huge thing. I said, okay, time is a value. So that really becomes the first thing. And I didn't know that this is what I was sorting out, but that's how it started. You start to go, what are the things I value? If I value freedom, what does freedom mean? What does that look like to you? Does freedom mean that I can take off work whenever I like? Because that might be heading for a senior position. Does freedom mean that there is no schedule? Does freedom mean that I work in the woods? Okay. There's, my husband now that I've been remarried, and my husband now, that was his path. His path was living in Scotland and camping, and he worked in those spaces where all he did was being immersed in the exact thing that he wanted at all times. It's going to mean different things, but we have to identify first what we value. And again, it's another space that most of us don't sit down and really look at. Is it freedom? Is it, a lot of us, we pick some off a list, like, I value honesty and I value this. Okay, great. Lip service. What does it really mean? When you see that acted out in your life, when it is real in your life, what do you see that looking like? What do you see honesty looking like in your life when you say that that's a value? So once you can identify the values, then we can start coming into, well, what does that look like? And you get nitty gritty. So like you went into, I could have this other job, but I think that's almost too far, right? We're not even there yet. We start to go with, I want to be able to, this is what I want my mornings to look like, or I want to have days like this. Not everyone wants to travel, right? So the way that I've built my life is very specific to allow me to travel. I recognize that travel was a big part of what I want to do. And so there are other people who want maybe investments. And so they go, and I have those as well, but maybe the first things they start is going, I want to buy a house or 2 or 3. These are the things I want to do. So the way that they build up the life they want is going to need to accommodate a way that allows them to save, allows them to invest, surrounding themselves around the people who have that knowledge. That's going to look very different than the way that I built mine up, in a way that says I can travel on the drop of a hat for most of the time. Not because I've done anything better. I've specifically built my life up to work that way. I had to say no to things that wouldn't allow that to happen. And so I tell even my clients now, because as you started in this intro, and I'm sure some of your listeners are like, I thought she does business stuff. What happened here? Is that I tell them we build the lifestyle first. There was no point in us trying to build a business that quote unquote, it's going to work this way and then trying to fit your life around it. We have to look at the life you want to live first, because any strategy can work. It's just a matter of whether you want to work it.
Yeah.
And so if you go, someone says TikTok, sure, it can work. Do you want to do TikTok? If you're like, not really, guess what? It's not going to work then, because you're not in it. You don't want to be part of it. So we have to pick the lifestyle that you want and what that looks like, and then build the right business around it. And so for you in that case, it's not, I could do this job, that job. We go, what do I want? And then we start to find the pieces of what would accommodate that. What would connect with that? And so you can go, you know what? I like that. So I'll give a great example. When I went through this process, I was really great at throwing parties. I was great at throwing parties. Lots of people would, have me over for, I'd do their baby showers. I had done weddings, very crafty, centerpieces, all of those things. Really amazing. I loved doing it. It was so much fun. Mm-hmm. So that was the thing. Like, maybe this is what I should do. Like, this is like my thing. But then my values, after working in corporate for so long, my values were, I do not want to have to work holidays and weekends.
Yeah.
Guess when people have events?
Only those times.
Typically holidays and weekends. And so it wasn't that I can't do that anymore, but that's not going to be the job. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the job. That's the difference. That's the lifestyle versus the ability. So even though they seem compatible, you start to come back and go, oh, wait a minute. It goes against the value I have. My value is I don't want to work on those days. Similarly, I learned this I thought I loved to cook as well. And I worked in natural products and I love healthy food. And I learned a lot going through cancer treatments with my husband about healthy food, so much about that space. Mm-hmm. And so I really had a passion for that. I've studied Ayurvedic medicine. I studied traditional Chinese medicine in China and Ayurvedic medicine in India. I mean, I'm really into this space. So I thought maybe that's the thing. I'm going to I want to make these meals. I should have a restaurant. And thankfully, my husband now reminded me what owning a restaurant means versus coming up with great recipes.
Yeah.
Owning a restaurant, filling seats, having inventory, overhead. I was like, oh, that's not what I want to do at all. Now, some of you might hear that and go, oh, I'm for it. Amazing. Then we're close to what that thing might be. And we don't know if it'll pan out, but we're close to at least take the chance and say, I tried. I think that's really where it is. What we look at is first our values and then the lifestyle we want. Then we can start playing with what accommodates that in terms of bringing in income to facilitate it.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. Because I was going to ask you, so when you're working with someone, like, where do you begin? And that answers it perfectly. What do you value? Right.
Yeah.
Then from that, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And I like how you broke it down to, what do you want your mornings to look like? What would you like your schedule to look like in terms of, when you will be working? If maybe you want to have the afternoons and the evenings for your family, so you put all of your focus on the work in the mornings. Like, what does it look like for you? Maybe you're a night owl and you'd rather work at night. Well, what kind of role would facilitate your ability to work whenever you want
what
to?
Would accommodate you being gone for weeks at a time, or you actually being allowed to live on the road? What would accommodate someone who has meetings, like you said, meetings in the morning and the rest of the day free, or that I can go and mountain climb, or ride my bike once a week? Any of those, there's nothing too small or too big to bring into the picture and start to put the puzzle pieces together and see what comes up. There'll be incredible things that most of us have no idea that exists. That's a job. Yeah, that crazy thing is a job. I know somebody who restores paper. Like, they restore ancient transcripts and manuscripts, things like that. Like, that's what they do. And they can do it whenever they want because they're they're one of very few people who do it. So they're in demand. They get to concentrate on something that excites them. I mean, again, paper, some people really just knowing that they could fix something. That's a big thing on TikTok right now. I think I'm not on it, but it's people cleaning rugs. Look how dirty it was. Now it's so clean. There's people really love that stuff. So there's something for everyone that we can go, well, Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe your business, and maybe we come up with the most innovative process for your business, for your way of coaching, for your way of podcasting, because of those things that you value. And you go, well, no, I don't want to do an hour one. I know somebody who did a podcast that was called 4 Questions in 8 Minutes.
That's cool.
Pretty neat. Because they said, I want it to be quick. I know I want it fast. I know I can only consume content. And it worked great for him. And so we can create it however we want. That's what we forget. We tend to look at what's already there and then try to fit our life around that. Absolutely. We're doing it backwards. We got to do it the other way. It's the idea of be, do, have. Are you familiar with that? Be, do, have?
A little bit. Yeah. I think I've heard it before.
So a lot of times we think we have to have it, right? We have to have the thing, whatever it is, that success, or we have to, have the bike in order to do the biking, in order to be the cyclist, right?
Yeah.
But we have it backwards. We need to step into being that person, be the cyclist, show up where cyclists show up, hang out in the shop where they're at, start to study the bikes, learn the things that you want, because eventually you'll start doing the things that cyclist does. And eventually you're going to have the life that a cyclist has. I'm using that as an example. But that's where it is. We need to just step into that space first, and then we can start creating that identity, just like you were saying, right? When you stepped into that identity, because you actually started to identify, when you said who you want to be, it really does start with those values. And we can't look at the identity is reinforced by our actions, right? It's not just, we just, this is me. It's going to be reinforced by the actions. That's why it's be, do, have. So we step in to say, this is where I want to go. And I start to do those things. So it's the same way. Once you identify the values and well, what actions does someone take who has that a value? If someone says health is a value, a lot of us can go, we know what actions they take. Oh, they're at the gym every day, or they do yoga and then the gym and they have a smoothie. And we just put this picture together of the actions they take. Well, that doesn't immediately make them healthy. But as they continue to do that,
yes,
they'll be pretty darn healthy. Right? And so it's really that be, do, have.
I love that. That's powerful. So you work with solopreneurs, coaches, content creators, people who want to lean into their uniqueness to create the lifestyle that they love. And you have several different ways that you help them do that. You have your Success by Design program. You also help people get certified in your time design program, which is incredible. So you have many different things that you offer. Guys, in the description, you can go check out all those different things at TanyaMFK.com. It's in the description. But for those just listening, TanyaMFK.com. What I would like to know is, how often do you re-ask yourself, what do I want my lifestyle to look like? And how much has that changed? Regularly, you ask. Okay.
Yes. So first, I do want to throw out there, you guys, my name, Tanya Marie Figueres-Kreisinger. And because that is pretty much difficult to remember to spell, to say, that's why it's Tanya MFK. I do get the question a lot, like, why? So Tanya MFK, that is why. And so when you're looking at this is something that we do on a regular basis. At minimum once a year, we do it every November, the last quarter of the year, whether you're one of my one-to-one clients, whether you're in our Success by Design group, wherever you are in contact with me, even if you come to one of our just free workshops and webinars we do, Q4 will always be focused on reflection of the last year. We're usually reflecting on the year in about September. Okay. Wow. We're looking back and going, what were the lessons? Where did I start out? Where did I end up? What worked? What didn't? What am I going to bring with me to the next year? What am I going to leave here? And once we look at the reflection, then we revisit the values. And so we actually look at 18 areas of our life every time. So we look at anything from wealth, health, relationships, sex, family, friendships, everything. A lot of things adults don't do is to go, what do I want from my friendships? What does friendship look like? Who do I want to make sure to really continue a connection with? And what efforts will I make? What will that look like? Why do I want it to look that way? And so we revisit that every time. Now, the more often you do it, the less you'll have to adjust, because you really just check in and go, do I still feel that way? I do. Because as we said earlier, the one thing we can bank on is change. So ideally, we're always changing. Ideally, we're always growing. If you're finding yourself stagnant, there's somewhere in your life you're sticking your heels in the sand and demanding it to look a certain way. Because life inevitably is the one thing you can bank on, is that it will always change. So as you're going through your year and you're growing and you're changing, it's good to check back in and go, in January, I thought that was the most important thing. But right now, is that still it? And it's a simple yes or no. If it's yes, you're like, good, okay, keep going for it. No, then what is it now? And it's really, so whether you do that quarterly, it's something I like to, we look at our 90-day sprints often and we just kind of check in. We can do weekly reflections. We close out our days every day. There's lots of different ways, but if nothing else, once a year, typically around, for us, it's October, November, we go through this life vision, which is the 18 areas of our life, and getting really specific on what wealth looks like, health looks like, what the actions will take, all of those things. And then we always do life vision first, and we come back to our business vision. And is the business vision, now that we've reset and clarified our life vision, does our business vision align? Does it connect with the thing that I just said I value and is important to me in the life I want? So is the vision for my business the same way? Do I want 1,000 clients, or do I want 5 high-paying clients? Which connects the most? So we do that and connect with that on a regular basis to make sure that we know what we're doing. Because again, the whole concept of success by design is that nobody else can choose what it is. You have to step and look at that. Once you clarify that, then you get to design what success looks like. My life won't look like success to some other people, and someone else's life won't look like success to me. Yeah. It's by my design. And once I know the design, that what I want, then I can step into designing the mindset, designing the plan, and designing the strategy and my time to make sure that I can create it.
If people only listen, I'm going to re-listen to that. If people only listen to that last 3 to 4 minutes there, because I got to say, I didn't expect that from the question, but the structure and the intention of, I'm going to look at this past year, but not just this past year, but assess things as the changes occur in your life. Yeah. We all hear the quote, what you measure grows, what you track grows. And what are we measuring? Like, are we measuring our friendships? Are we measuring our health, fitness, like all these different areas, the 18 different areas that you mentioned? Like, what areas are you measuring in your life, guys? I'm going to re-listen to that. I'm going to re-listen to the whole conversation because Tanya, I love this. I could talk to you forever about this.
Yes.
But guys, you can talk and listen to her forever by going to her different channels and social medias. I'm going to have links in the description. Just real quick though, where's the best place for people to follow your journey as you travel the world and do all these awesome things?
Yeah. Well, I am the only Tanya MFK in the world. So quite honestly, you could Google me and I will be the only one that comes up. TanyaMFK.com. All of our social is at Tanya MFK. So any of those places you can find me, connect with me. I'm real. I pay attention there. Yes, I have a team, but if you send a message, I'm going to see it. I'm going to be the one to respond. I don't play the kind of velvet rope game. So I love to connect with people. I love to keep that realism of authenticity of actually knowing who I'm connecting with. It's not a numbers game. But I will say this, out of all the stuff you've heard today and all the places of inspiration, it's really easy to be inspired. Go scroll Instagram. Tons of coaches will give you lots of inspiration. But it's a matter of what you're going to do tomorrow with it. It's a matter of putting it into practical. And that's why I talk about, you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's no someday. So until you start taking that inspiration and distilling it down into some real action each day, you're not going to have the results of that life that you want. So it comes a time to make it real. And your biggest superpower before any of the stuff we talked about today will be getting really, really clear of designing your time, not managing your time, designing it in the way that you want to show up every day, because a well-lived life is just a series of well-lived days, and well-lived days are created hour by hour. And it's not about productivity. It's about intention. So I want to leave it with that.
I can't think of a better way to wrap this up. Tanya, thank you so much for being an incredible guest and bringing your focus, your time, and your passion to this conversation. And I'm so glad we made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
You heard it from Tanya. There's no wrap-up needed. If anything, I took from this conversation that it is possible to create the life that you want. And to do that, you have to ask yourself those powerful questions. What are my values? What is the lifestyle I want to create? What actions and skills do I have that will facilitate that lifestyle that I want to live? And you got to go check out Tanya's social profiles, check out her website, check out all the awesome things she's doing. Links are in the description. If you enjoyed this conversation, then all that we ask is you share the show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason that we've grown the way that we have over the past 2 years, because you're the best part of the Be Better team. Thanks so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.